everybody. Welcome to another episode of Money and Change. My name is Ira Robinson. As always, we're here with Stu Shear. Hello, Stu.
Hi, Ira. How you doing on this beautiful blue sky day?
Windy, cold, chilly. Oh, my goodness. I'm not ready for winter.
Well, I'll tell you what. Today was such a good day here in Ohio. I thought, well, it might be the last day to mow the yard. And I thought, well, it's only 55 degrees. I think I'll just try that. And so I went out, and I did my yard maintenance and everything and put the mower away. And in my neighborhood, it's monkey see, monkey do. If I mow my yard, then my neighbor says, my God, I've got to mow mine. So then he comes out and mows his. And then somebody across the street sees him mowing the yard and they get their mower out. So they can all blame it on me. But it was a beautiful day out. Really nice. It'll probably be the last day that I have to mow. I mean, the grass really isn't growing as much now. So I can put the mower away and kind of anticipate snow. There's a big pause there. I really don't like to anticipate snow.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm done with cold. I really would love to move south. That's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what. I can hook you up with a real estate person down in Florida if you want to go down there.
No, I'll pass on that one.
Oh, well, they're having sales on stuff right now. But anyhow, warmer climates are nice, but then hot climates are something else.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyhow, without further ado, let's get into the shout outs and then the disclaimer. We have a really big shout out for WCET FM 101.7 in Columbia, South Carolina for carrying the show. A big thanks. And if you're in the Columbia, South Carolina area, go ahead and check out WCET FM 101.7. Also, a big shout out to Brad and Krista at the Big Family Homestead on YouTube. Check out their YouTube videos. They have a lot of useful things and sometimes some pretty funny things on there. Also, a big shout out to Shana Knack, Assistant Director of Development at the University of Findlay in Findlay, Ohio. You can check that school out at www.findlay.edu. Also, I'd like to express my condolences to the family of Dr. Shiv Gupta. And Dr. Gupta was the professor of economics and business at the university, and he'd been there for over 45 years. Matter of fact, he was there when I was a senior. And very nice gentleman and very, very, very intelligent, excellent person. They're going to have to find somebody to really fill his shoes there. But my condolences go out to Dr. Gupta and his family. Also, a big shout out to Mary Frances Rodriguez Barnes at D52creativeservices.com. Check out their website if you need some marketing or other types of services. Check out our website at www.d52, all one word, creativeservices.com. Also, a big shout out to Skills and Papa Bear at Show Us Don't Tell Us. I know that they're on Mondays from midnight until 3 a.m. And they always have some really good stuff to talk about. Unfortunately, I can only stay up till about 1 o'clock and then I'm gone. So for Night Owls, Show Us Don't Tell Us, check it out. It's a good show. And there's something about, there's an author that is putting out a book, and he has Open Eyes Network.
Indeed.
You know that guy?
I do. He's a pretty nice guy, I think. Yeah, actually, I've got my new book, Penitence, that just got released on Friday, Veterans Day, in fact, and hopefully everybody out there is checking it out. It's a really good book. It's a psychological horror. I'm very proud of how it came out, and so far so good, I think. We had a lot of pre-orders for it, and yeah, really cool. And I'm also right now in the midst of taking part in NaNoWriMo, the National November Writing Month, to finish a novel in a month, you know, the whole challenge with it and everything. I this is the first time I've actually participated in the NaNoWriMo, although I've been writing for many years now. But this is the first time I've done it, and it's sort of because there was coincidental timing with it all. I was prepping to write my new book, The Eternals Game, and then National Novel Writing Month came along, and I'm like, well, it's there. I'm doing it at the same time. I may as well participate. So, yeah, I'm right in the middle of writing that one. I'm about halfway done at this point in time, and I expect I'll be done here in the next couple of weeks with the new one, Eternals Game.
And I bet you your fingers are smoking, right?
They are indeed, yes. And if you guys want to check out any of my stuff, it is available on my website, originalworlds.com. I also have audio versions of a lot of my short stories and flash fiction and that kind of thing there as well. I've been putting those together over the past few weeks.
Hey, would you consider what we've just done a plug?
It would be indeed, yes.
Oh, yeah, it would be a plug. Check out his Facebook site, Ira Robinson. And he has his artwork for Penitence on there, and it looks really interesting. It really does.
I'm actually going to be putting together a giveaway for the book release, a poster-sized version of that cover without the words and everything, just the cool-looking artwork that's on it. So, yeah, look forward to that as well.
Well, we have to check that out. And I don't know how in the heck you can write so much, and I can only do the Wrinkle City Gazette once a month. I mean, just 10 pages of pictures and stories and jokes and all kinds of stuff, but I can only do that.
Lots of years of training my brain into that kind of mode, I think, is really what it is. You know, I used to kind of program myself to do at least 1,500 words a day as a goal. And then as time has progressed, I've ended up going up to 3,000 as my average per day written, which is, about 15 pages worth of information in a book. So, yeah. And sometimes I meet the goal of 5,000 to 6,000 words a day as well.
And do you soak your hands in Epsom salt solution?
I don't actually, but I'm lucky. You know, I've got carpal tunnel, but it's not so bad when I'm writing with the keyboard. It's not too bad. If I'm trying to write with a pencil or something like that, oh, it's horrific. But yeah, with the typewriter, it's not too bad on me. I do have a couple of friends that write in the romance genre, and because they have to put out so much content in that particular genre of books, some of them will write upwards of 10 to 12,000 words a day, and they literally, I mean, their fingertips bleed. They have to use compresses and everything on them to help them after they've gotten done writing and stuff for the day. It's crazy. It's such an author mill in that genre. You know, they have to put out that much content all the time.
I wonder if they know anybody out in the movie industry and TV industry in California. They could have some really wild books there.
Oh, yeah, to say the least.
Well, at least they could go in and sit in on the trial and take notes.
Yeah, I'll tell you that genre alone is really big business. I mean, you know, look at how successful things like the Harlequin publishers and that kind of thing are. I mean, it really is big business. There's billions of dollars in that per year that goes just in that one genre.
Gee, I wonder if I could turn the Wrinkle City Gazette into one of those things.
Well,
maybe I'll wait until Valentine's Day and do a Valentine's Day special.
There you go. Yep, maybe something with the nudist colony.
Oh, hey, they come back in the Clothing Optional Society. Happy Buns comes back in every year around May, and there's always some type of calamity that happens there. Indeed. When they open up.
Their buns are always in trouble.
Oh, well, the buns own it, you know, but you got to read the Wrinkle City Gazette to find out what's going on. Also, the Wrinkle City Gazette, I tried to upload the latest edition for November, and for some reason, it won't upload, and I have to work that out. However, we do have a website at wrinkle-city-gazette.weebly.com, and that has all of the archives plus the new edition that's there. Living color. So check it out. Well, you know, before we get going, you know, we always do a disclaimer. And the information contained in this presented material is from the posting of news agencies on the internet and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the owners of this program. We are not responsible for and expressly disclaim all liability for damages of any kind arising out of use, reference to, or reliance on any information contained in this broadcast. The information provided is not offered as financial advice, financial planning, or for investment purposes. So you want to use this information at your own risk. Now, from the currency chart today at 4 o'clock, from xe.com. The euro is still the same against the US dollar at $1.16. The Great British Pound is up a penny. It went up to $1.31. The Australian dollar dropped a penny at 76 cents to the dollar. The Canadian dollar stayed the same at 78 cents to the US dollar. The Swiss franc is still at parity. Now, this is 3 weeks in a row that it's a dollar for a dollar, or actually a dollar for a franc. The Japanese yen, it just moved up a very tiny bit. It's still a little over 0.8 of a cent. The Chinese yuan is at 15 cents to the dollar. It dropped a tenth of a penny. I don't know why it dropped, other than they've had some problems since their last Communist Party conference, and some of the news that came out last week caused a few things to happen. So we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks. Also, they're now in the process of doing instead of the petrodollar, which is the US dollar for any type of oil, they're now doing a Chinese yuan renminbi, or yuan RMB, for oil. And then they can turn that into gold. You can buy it in renminbi and they pay it out in gold. So that's something that's new, and the Russians are going to do that too. When that happens to the US petrodollar, we're going to have some problems later on. The Kuwaiti dinar, hey, it's still $3.30. The Vietnamese dong, hey, it got a little bit lighter. It's at 22,709.65 dong to the barrel. Bitcoin, holy cow. 3 weeks ago, Bitcoin was $5,892.85 for Bitcoin. Then it went up, and now it's at $7,162.31. $7,162.31. Can you believe that? It just keeps going up and up.
That is just crazy.
And maybe that's going to be the new, in quotes, gold. I don't know how people are going to buy it. It's a lot of computing power to get there, to just get one Bitcoin. But it's not controlled by any government, and that's one good thing. Gold went up from $1,276.13 an ounce up to $1,286.12 an ounce. So the value of gold is going up, and with the Chinese yuan for gold, chances are gold is actually going to go higher and higher and higher. That's a prediction that people are making. Once the Russians get into the ruble for gold and for oil, then it's going to go higher again. So I don't know what the U.S. government's going to do. I have a feeling they're trying to force everybody back on the gold standard, and China's been buying gold like crazy for the last few years, and the same thing with Russia. I don't know where the U.S. stands on that. Silver. Hey, silver dropped. It's down to $17 and a penny an ounce. Platinum, it went up. It's at $938.23 an ounce. Palladium, wow. Last week it was $997.23 an ounce. It's now up to $1,013.23 an ounce. So palladium is going up. Ethereum, well, we've got a story about Ethereum. Last week it was $290.10. It's now $325.43 for one Ether coin or Ethereum coin. And the story that we have came from Zero Hedge this week about Ethereum. And, I've always told people if you're going to get involved in precious metals, make sure it's from a reliable source. Also, make sure that um, you get the smaller coins because we talked about last week, about having tungsten in small gold bars. And somebody bought it from the Royal Bank of Canada, had the sales slip and everything. And he took it to a goldsmith to smooth it out to do another project and found out that it wouldn't roll out. And instead, they did another test and it broke. And then they used an acid test and found out that it was not pure gold. And that's interesting coming from the Royal Bank of Canada. It's scary because the bank said, oh, we're not going to pay you for it. You can't bring it back. And everything was in a sealed wrapper that was just fantastic. Um, so, I think what's going to happen uh, is maybe a lawsuit out of it against the Royal Bank of Canada because the bank said, well, it may be counterfeit, but we didn't know it. Well, they ought to. It had all their seals, stamps, and all that kind of stuff on it. But getting back to Ethereum, uh, they had a coding problem, and a coding bug froze the wallets containing $280 million. And in a report from Zero Hedge, it said, in a vivid reminder of the risk involved for cryptocurrency investors, Ethereum slumped on Tuesday when a critical security vulnerability in a multi-signature wallet belonging to a London startup, Parity Technologies, was triggered on the 6th of November, paralyzing wallets created after July 19th and freezing tens of millions in Ethereum. Parity is the same company whose coding error helped hackers steal $30 million worth of Ethereum. On Tuesday, the company admitted it was facing more security problems. Parity issued a critical security alert to inform its users about a bug that got accidentally triggered, which resulted in the freezing of more than $280 million worth of ETH, which is Ethereum, including $90 million belonging to Parity's founder and Ethereum former core developer Gavin Woods. Uh-oh, they messed with the boss. I don't think the boss would be happy. Well, the users with assets and multi-sig wallet created by Parity Wallet that was deployed after the 20th of July, those were the affected users. And that code still contained another issue. It was possible to turn the Parity Wallet library contract into a regular multi-sig wallet, multi-signature wallet, and become an owner of it by calling the init wallet function. It's beyond my pay grade, and I always tell people, if you can't hold it in your hand and it's not real, don't buy it. And anyhow, that code that was there has a library path, and somewhere in that path, someone removed one of the libraries, and as a result, the code didn't work, and as a result of that, money's frozen, which can be fixed, according to David Mondrus, Mondrus, Chief Executive of Trive, Trive, and that's a blockchain-based research firm, according to Bloomberg. But they said that no ether has been stolen. It was just merely locked up. So again, if you're going to invest in cryptocurrencies, please check out all the things that can happen. And just remember this, and we've talked about it before, Ira, is Mt. Gox. Some people had millions in Bitcoin over in Japan and elsewhere. And Mt. Gox suddenly crashed. And where did the Bitcoin go? They never found out. Somebody's got it somewhere. But it's scary. I mean, it's a number out there. and you might have 5 of them in your digital wallet, and then all of a sudden something happens to your wallet and you're out that Bitcoin. And that Bitcoin could translate into a lot of dollars. Then we had another thing happen this week, according to Reuters. You know, they had a purge over in Saudi Arabia.
Another one?
Yeah, well, this was a big one. It seems like Mohammed bin Salman, they call him MBS, is taking over the country. I mean, he's part of the royal family. And what he did was he, in quotes, assumed that there was some type of problem with corruption. And a lot of things were going on. So he decided to freeze the accounts of the arrested royal ministers. He arrested them. And the Saudi minister, Walid, very wealthy businessman, was one of them. And this Mohammed bin Salman is trying to control the kingdom. And he said there's been a lot of money laundering going on. And so he froze more than 1,200 accounts belonging to the individuals and companies in the kingdom as part of the government's anti-corruption crackdown. And he said that the number is going to rise. And the Saudi Central Bank has been expanding the list of accounts it's requiring lenders to freeze on an almost hourly basis. Now, bankers are saying that if the freezes stayed in place for long, they could start to hurt day-to-day business activities, such as paying staff and creditors and making other transactions. A second banker that was interviewed, according to the report, said that most of the frozen accounts belong to individuals rather than companies, and that banks were being allowed by the regulator to continue to fund existing commitments. But they put them up in the Ritz-Carlton. All of the sheiks that were arrested of the royal family and others, they put them up in the Ritz-Carlton. It's one of the plushest hotels over there. But instead of fancy beds and so forth, they just had mattresses on the floor to sleep on. So that's going to be interesting. And what did they do with the 800 billion? I think that was the total. $800 billion. Yeah, the government gets it.
Well, they just made
And
their funding for the year, didn't they?
well, yeah, they were in a bind. And so there was assumed or alleged that there was a bunch of corruption. And so he just said, we're going to lock up their funds. And that's what happened. It's scary. There's been reports that the Saudis were working with the Israelis behind everybody's backs and so forth, and different things are going on. And some people are speculating there might be a Middle East war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. You know, one thing leads to another. And if there's been corruption, it's like I've always said, expose the corruption, bring the people to trial, and eliminate the problem and correct it. And that's the same thing in the U.S. There's been a lot of stuff in the swamp, or as I like to call it, the Washington cesspool. And it's time to drain the cesspool. Because there's been corruption there. And it just, I know it happens everywhere, but on the scale that it has for the last 15 years or so, maybe even longer, it deserves to be drained. Well, Salman is doing that in Saudi Arabia. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Also in Venezuela, there was a report that just came out from Reuters, and it was shown on Zero Hedge today. Venezuela is just 24 hours away from a formal declaration of default. Now, we talked, what was it, maybe 5 or 6 months ago, that the economy in Venezuela was going down the tubes.
Yep.
People were leaving the country and going to a neighboring country, taking their money, which was almost worthless, to buy toilet paper because they couldn't get it in Venezuela. They have a hard time getting food in Venezuela. I have no idea what it's really like down there because I've never been to a South American country. I've been out of the States, but only to Canada and the Bahamas. But can you imagine people starving in the streets? And they were now selling pets for food. That was one of the latest reports. And now they're going to be possibly bankrupt tomorrow, which is Friday. And they also said that there would be a meeting on Monday to see what they're going to do from there. And there was an Indian company that's not really overly concerned about non-payment for over a half a year and is willing to keep giving Maduro, who's the dictator there, the president, the El Presidente, the benefit of the doubt. And they've got certain challenges at this stage, said Videsh, Videsh, in a response to Reuters. And he said they have assured that they are working on it, payment of dues, and in due course it will be settled and follow-up steps will be undertaken. Well, they could be insolvent as soon as Friday, and there will have to be a meeting on Monday with ISDA Determinations Committee. It's scary. I don't even know. There was some talk about the Russians probably coming in and trying to help them out. But there's a lot of concern there because U.S. companies could get stuck with their investments down there. And if they go in to help, there's a person there by the name of Tariq al-Assami, Assami, and he's been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury as an alleged drug smuggler. And so if the investors here in the States go in, then they'd be tied into a drug smuggler and a lot of problems would result for those companies. So it's scary down there. I feel for the people down there. And since they went communist, everything's fantastic under socialism until you run out of other people's money. And Margaret Thatcher said that. Well, Venezuela has run out of everybody else's money. They're broke. How are they going to fix it? The price of oil is down. If the price of oil comes back up, that'll help. But that country's basically toast right now, and probably will be for several years. Then you take a look at economies around the world, different places. Go to the United States. Mike Snyder in the Economic Collapse blog talked about, is the economy okay? And it says U.S. retail store closings hit new record high as West Coast homelessness soars. And he says, if the U.S. economy is doing fine, why have we already shattered the all-time record for retail store closings in a single year? And Snyder says, whenever he writes about retail apocalypse, many try to counter my arguments or his arguments by pointing out the growing dominance of Amazon. Well, they got to have somebody to blame it on, but Amazon still accounts for less than 10% of the U.S. retail sales. If you go back to 2008, the economy plummeted and absolutely devastated retailers, and in a result, you had an all-time high of 6,163 retail stores being closed that year. And so far in 2017, over 6,700 stores have been shut down, and we've got basically another month to go. That's scary. I don't know about your economy in Fort Wayne, but how many closings have you had lately?
Well, we've had quite a few. We've had actually one of the big ones that was just announced here this week, out of nowhere. Really, it came out of nowhere. Aunt Millie's, the bakery that's actually nationwide bakery. I mean, they're sold everywhere. They have their headquarters here in Fort Wayne, and this is where they got their start years ago. They have 6 different facilities that they bake in throughout the U.S., but their primary was right here in Fort Wayne, and they just announced this week that they're going to be closing down the facility. The headquarters might still remain here, but they're not sure at this point in time. But they will be closing their doors here basically by the end of the month. So, there's hundreds of people that are going to be losing their jobs, and it's out of nowhere. The situation is weird here in Fort Wayne. We've got this situation here where the economy seems to be doing okay, and then our city, for some stupid reason, keeps deciding to build facilities that really, I mean, are unnecessary. They're excessive. Lots of money being spent. The road conditions are not the best, and yet they keep building these weird roundabouts and leaves all over the place. It's just it's a dumb situation that we've got going on, to say the least.
You mean you still have those 60-foot deep potholes?
Yeah, we're definitely known for those, aren't we?
A school bus goes into it and they have a ladder on top so they can pop the ladder up so they can crawl out of the hole.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, when I was over there, the roads weren't all that bad, when we had dinner, and it really wasn't all that bad. In comparison, Lansing and East Lansing were the worst roads I've ever been on up in Michigan. And we were coming back from Frankenmuth. If you ever get a chance, you got to go up to Frankenmuth. It's kind of a neat place. But, the road conditions are just something else up in Michigan. And yeah, you've got some problems in Fort Wayne, and I love Aunt Millie's bread.
Me too. It's really good.
I can get it. I can get it here at Kroger's. And I went in this last week and I thought something was up because Sunbeam suddenly bought up like 6 rows and racks of bread in Kroger's, and Aunt Millie's only had 1 row. They used to have that whole section. And I can't figure that out. I mean, that's really good bread. And all of a sudden, boom, they're closing it down. Well, according to the report from Snyder, he said they're learning that Sears is closing down another 60 stores. And Walgreens announced that it intends to close about 600 locations. And about 300 retailers have declared bankruptcy so far in 2017. And according to that report, they're going to lose 147 million square feet of retail space by the end of the year. But yet they want to blame it on Amazon. Maybe it's because the other companies haven't kept up. You got a problem in your town when your big city mall, the anchor store, suddenly becomes Goodwill. And I'm not knocking Goodwill, but I'm saying that once you had Sears as an anchor store, or you had Dunham's here in Ohio, which is a sporting goods store, and you had J.C. Penney, you had anchor stores, and suddenly the anchor stores start moving out. What does that tell you about the economy? And then you got people out on the West Coast with the, homeless people sleeping different places. You've got a thing in San Diego where they're scrubbing sidewalks down with bleach because the homeless population is spreading hepatitis. Could you imagine, walking down the street and you've got all kinds of stuff on the street? And stuff, urine, feces, and who knows what. And people are just camping out by the side of the sidewalk. You have to step over them. or that you have tent cities because people can't afford things. It's crazy. And you take a look at pensions, for example. We got another story from the Sacramento Bee, and they're talking about it's not sustainable. Sacramento lashes out at CalPERS, which is California Public Retirement System, after raising pension payments. You get into a situation with pensions. And the latest sign that America's looming pension crisis is inching closer to an all-time collapse that will end in maybe a series of bailouts or worse, the failure to pay out a retiree's coveted benefits. A handful of California cities are lashing out at CalPERS after being forced to hike pension contributions to offset expectations for long-term returns. Well, they've had that happen in Dallas. We've had it happen in Detroit. We've had it happen in Chicago. And there are other cities where the pensions are negotiated and they say, okay, we'll pay that to the public employee retirement people. But then through poor investments or poor planning, they end up going broke. Or they're underfunded. You look at, Kentucky. They were severely underfunded, and I think we talked about that maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. And I believe the report said it was like 78% underfunded. That's scary. That means you put in 30 years, 35 years working for the state, you get out, you have nothing for it if the state goes broke or they default on their pension plan. It's really scary. Well, you take a look at Sacramento. According to the Bee, they said you can expect to pay a total of $216 million to CalPERS in fiscal year 2018-19, and it's an increase of $27 million over this year. And half of that increase will be borne by one local government, the city of Sacramento. And it's one of the region's largest local governments. And you'll see pension costs go up by an estimated 14% next fiscal year. Well, in a Stanford study in 2016, the California pensions were found to be underfunded by $1 trillion or $93,000 per household. And who's going to have to bail it out? It's going to have to be the taxpayers, because somebody didn't do wise investments, or for some reason the investments just didn't pan out. So here you go. You take a look at Sacramento and you've got higher revenues, but you have to cut 25% of the police and fire services and cut other less essential services just to have pensions. I mean, they have to cut costs. Here in Ohio, we're a little bit better with the investments. We're not as liberal as California. And then you take a look at pensions in Hawaii. The Maui News, hey, we go to links to get all this information, but the pensions it's going crazy. Pension panic in paradise, according to the Maui News. And Maui residents outraged over 52% spike in pension contributions. And it said earlier this year, Maui County residents in the island state of Hawaii were somewhat less than ecstatic to learn that their property taxes were going to increase by approximately $29.7 million for fiscal 2018. And then fast forwarded to just a few months, and it looks like a substantial portion of those tax increases won't go to provide better public services for Maui residents at all, but rather they'll be plowed into the state's massively underwater pension fund. And as the Maui News points out, Maui's contributions to the state employees' retirement system will surge 52% over the next couple of years. And that's if everything goes to plan. Now, Maui County paid $31 million into the pension fund in 2017, but now its payments will increase to approximately $34 million in fiscal 2018, $36 million in 2019, $42 million in fiscal 2020, and $47 million in fiscal 2021. Well, there was a guy that said that extra payments were needed to help the public pension system avert a crisis of unfunded liabilities. And those unfunded ones, according to Bob Williams, who's the president of State Budget Solutions, says it's about $12.4 billion. And the state's saying, well, you know, it's about $12 billion. Well, Bob Williams comes up with the word on the street that in October 2016, according to their report, they have it at $35.1 billion. And you can check that out by going to www.grassrootinstitute.org. You take a look at all of that, it looks like $24,544 of tax money that will be taken from every man, woman, and child in the state. You need to find out why and how it was underfunded. And you need to make those corrections as you go along. But of course, gee, is Hawaii a Democratic state? Do they have a Democratic governor?
Sure do.
Are they liberal as heck?
Sure are.
Uh-huh. You know, I'd say you made your own mess. You have to waller in it. I guess that's an old Midwestern saying. So, you know, it's kind of crazy. There was another report from Doug French from the Mises Institute. That's MISES. And pension problems worsen in 43 states, according to him. It's scary out there. And you've got, according to him, you've got good news and bad news. The good news, or maybe it's bad news, is Americans are retiring later, dying sooner, and sicker in between. And that came from Bloomberg. And Ben Steverman says, data released last week reports Bloomberg suggests Americans' health is declining and millions of middle-aged workers face the prospect of shorter and less active retirements than their parents enjoyed. I remember, you know, people that I grew up with, they said, well, when I get 50, I'm going to retire. And they're living longer. And I think my dad is 92, and I think he's been retired about 40 years. And he's lucky he's got fairly decent health. There are other people out there that don't have that health. And the retirement is just, it's crazy with the pensions. You've got a mortality rate that's up. I mean, cancer rate's up, obesity's up, diabetes is up. Sounds like the stock market. Everything's up. I wonder what the ratio would be with undertakers, you know, if their incomes are up due to all the deaths. But you take a look at the number of middle-aged Americans with ADL, in other words, activity of daily living. The limitations has jumped, according to the report. 12.5% of Americans at the current retirement age of 66 had an ADL limitation in their late 50s, up from 8.8% for people with a retirement age of 65. It's scary. Maybe that's why people are either killing themselves quickly, suicide, or slowly with alcohol, drugs, or overeating. And that's all good news to pension plans, according to the report. As life expectancy drops, The Society of Actuaries says a 65-year-old man can expect to live 85.6 years, and a woman can expect to make it to 87.6. So the group calculates a typical pension plan's obligations would fall by 0.7% to 1%. And that's a start, but it won't do much good in New Jersey, Kentucky, and Illinois. And that's where the pension plans are really bad. They didn't even mention California, and that's really bad there. I kind of wonder what would happen if a new plague broke out. A lot of people died. A mysterious plague, if you know what I mean. Or there was a war and a lot of people died. What happens to the pension funds? They don't have to pay them out. And maybe that's the way that they're going to try to bail things out. Who knows? It's only a hypothetical. And maybe it's a logical hypothetical. I don't know. What do you think, Ira?
It could be.
I smell a new book coming on.
Maybe.
The Pension Conspiracy.
Indeed. You know, well, I mean, you've said it. I mean, the thing is, the pensions that are around, you know, there are so many people that are getting older and remaining older, you know, like the life expectancy of the average person now is a lot longer now than it was 50 years ago or even 40 years ago. So the pension plans that were originally set up, you know, they kind of pre-planned for that lower expectation of maximum age and the maximum amount of time that they'd have to pay out. So now we have this situation where, you know, many more people now are living to be in their 80s and their 90s. So these pension programs, I mean, they're just not prepped for it. They're not ready for it. At the same time, though, the people do deserve these pensions because they did work for them and they were promised them with the working. So, you know, it's a really difficult situation because are we in the public supposed to support those that are, you know, involved in these pension programs, or do we just let them go and then encounter all the other problems that are going to come as a result of people no longer going to be, you know, being on these pension things? So they'd have to be transferred over to more Social Security and Medicare and so on and so forth, which is already having issues, you know. So it just, there's so many issues that are with it. How much responsibility does everybody else have for it? The main problem is that a lot of these pension programs, and you've talked about this before, Stu, many of these pension programs, they do not spend the money wisely and they don't invest the money that's there in ways to be able to help sustain the pension in the long term.
And it's scary.
It really
is. It's like a Ponzi scheme.
It is, yes.
You know, you're promised a lot when you go in. Oh, it sounds like Medicare and Social Security, doesn't it? It's like one big Ponzi scheme. And it depends on who gets out first, makes the most money. Of course, you'd have to ask Bernie Madoff how all that works, wouldn't you? And he's not talking.
Well, he definitely made off with a lot of money, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Oh, he made off all right. But you take a look at the pensions and how bad they are, and it's really scary. It really is. And today I saw a thing that was posted about a pension bailout to be introduced. And I'm thinking, oh, God, now what? Well, there was a report that came out. It was Zero Hedge, but it was also on Facebook and other places. But it said over the past year, we've provided extensive coverage of what will likely be the biggest, most politically charged, and most significant financial crisis facing the aging U.S. population, a multi-trillion-dollar pension storm, which was recently dubbed one of the most heated battles of a lifetime, and that was from John Malden. The reason, in a nutshell, why the U.S. public pension problem has stumped so many professionals is simple. For lack of a better word, it's an unsustainable Ponzi scheme. in which satisfying accrued pension and retirement obligations requires not only a constant inflow of new money, but also fixed income returns. Well, a bailout, yeah, in a lot of states is probably going to be needed. And that may be imminent. According to Pensions and Investments magazine, Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio, ugh, plans to introduce legislation that would allow struggling multi-employer pension funds to borrow from the U.S. Treasury to remain solvent. Aren't we broke enough? The U.S. is broke. We've got fiat money out there. We probably don't have enough gold to cover it. And because of all this Ponzi scheme going on in retirements, what's going to happen? You know, if OPERS here in Ohio, which is the Ohio Public Employee Retirement System, fails, I'm in a big world of hurt. I'm going to have to go back to work. I'm going to be 70 next year. And it's scary. I mean, I could always sell the Wrinkle City Gazette, but I don't know about that. But it's really scary. Well, anyhow, Sherrod Brown is going to introduce legislation that would allow struggling multi-employer pension funds to borrow from the Treasury. And it's co-sponsored by Tim Ryan, also of Ohio. And Tim Ryan, I think, is like Northeast Ohio. And it could be introduced this week or shortly after, and it would create a new office within the Treasury Department called the Pension Rehabilitation Administration. More federal employees, and the funds would come from the sale of Treasury-issued bonds to financial institutions. The pension funds could borrow for 30 years at low interest rates. The one and painfully amusing restriction for borrowers is that they could not make risky investments. Well, they shouldn't have made risky investments to begin with. I mean, the state teacher retirement system here in Ohio had some bad investments years ago. On paper, it looked pretty good, but they were junk bonds, and they got nailed. Now, the public retirement system for Ohio employees didn't have as many of junk bonds, and so they were better off. Now, Senator Brown, he's a Democrat from the Cincinnati area. He's a populist, and he's really aiming squarely at those pensions that are likely to recoup pennies on the dollar under the current investing climate with union workers. And Brown told a group of retired Teamsters in Ohio on Monday that the bill will be out shortly. And he said it's bad enough that Wall Street squandered workers' money, and it's worse that the government that's supposed to look out for these folks is trying to break the promise made to these workers. And he says, not on our watch. We won't allow that to happen, he said. Gee. And it's worse that the government that's supposed to look out for these folks is trying to break the promise. What planet is he living on? The Democrats were in charge for probably the last 15 years. He should have known that. Man, there's going to have to be bailouts because people are going to have to eat. You're going to have to take care of their medical benefits and everything else. But why have these problems suddenly creep up out of nowhere because somebody isn't watching what they're doing? And that just burns me. I'm sorry, but politicians come out and they make statements like that. Well, they've been there for 15 years, daggone it. They should have corrected the problem back then, but neglected to do so. And now they're going to turn around and blame it on the current administration. The cesspool in Washington has to be drained. Bring out all the corruption, both sides of the aisle, and submit them to justice and let the chips fall where they may. And if they have to build a new prison in the Nevada proving grounds for corrupt politicians, so be it. That's the way I look at it. And probably a lot of other people in the country look at it that way too. Here's another thing to look at. Did you know that about 33% of students drop out of college and they go on to default on their student debt?
I had definitely heard about that, yeah.
According to Lend EDU. And they said roughly 70% of Americans' bright-eyed and bushy-tailed high school seniors will go on to, in quotes, binge drink, study at a four-year college, but to our shock, less than two-thirds of them will manage to graduate with a degree. And even worse, 30% of the students will drop out after just 1 year on campus. And not surprisingly, a survey conducted recently by Lend EDU, that's L-E-N-D and capitalized EDU, found that college dropouts still manage to rack up an average of nearly $14,000 worth of student debt during their brief college careers, and a staggering number of them go on to default on that debt in very short order. They go into default. And you take a look at the reasons, around 3/4 or 74.79%, according to the report, of college dropouts responded yes to the question that, why did you go out of leave college, and why aren't you paying on your debt? Some of them said financial reasons, academic reasons, that was about 5.4%, social family reasons, 34%, legal reasons, 1.4%, health reasons, 11%, and other was like 12.9%, according to the reports. But despite their lack of success their first time around, nearly two-thirds of college dropouts say they're considering a second attempt at earning a college degree. My recommendation is go to a community college, a 2-year school. Go ahead and get your associate's degree, and then take it from there. That's all you have to do. Now, for some of the stories that we've talked about today, they're actually on moneyandchange.weebly.com. Check out the website. There's a lot of really good information there, and that's MoneyandChange.weebly, WEEBLY.com. Check it out. There's a ton of information in there. Also, there's a new page, Prepping You. It's a prepping checklist that we're putting together for November, December, January, and so forth. And if you go to the new section, and it's back in, we'll just call it in the more section when you look at it farther to the right, and it goes down to Be Prepared videos and SHTF security ideas and depression living. Check that out. But you go down and you'll see the Prepping You list. And it says, buy 5 pounds of iodized salt. Research ways to protect and defend yourself at home. Make or update your car kit. Check out and rotate your food cupboards. There's a whole bunch of ideas there that you might want to do. Take another FEMA class. Practice using two-way radios. A lot of different suggestions there. And finally, before we go, I said I had problems putting up the Wrinkle City Gazette, and boy, did I do that. For some reason, it just won't load up, so I'm fighting with that one right now. But we always leave with a little bit of humor. So there's a church in Wrinkle City called the Church of the Covered Dish, and Pastor Bob always gives a sermon there. And he says, we welcome people into our small but friendly parish. Services are on Wednesdays and Sundays with a 7-bean potluck supper on Friday nights. And he said, please pray for fellow parishioner Dort Cudwell and keep him in your thoughts as he made a grievous error in his ways. You see, Dort was in trouble. He forgot his wedding anniversary. His wife was really angry, and she told him, tomorrow morning I expect to find a gift in the driveway that does from 0 to 200 in less than 10 seconds, and it better be there. Well, the next morning, Dort got up and left for work. When his wife woke up, she looked out the window and saw a gift wrap box in the middle of the driveway. Well, confused, the wife put on her robe and ran out to the driveway. She unwrapped and opened the package, and inside found a brand new bathroom scale. Well, Dort's memorial service will be at the Amigon Funeral Home this Friday at 7 p.m., so please pray for him.
Indeed.
And that's all I have this week. Check it out on the Wrinkle City Gazette at wrinkle-city-gazette.weebly.com. Check it out. The whole archive is there too. And with that, that's all I have. Please donate to L&M Radio Network. And we forgot to mention Michael, but please donate to L&M Radio Network, Open Eyes Network, to keep us on the air. I don't get paid a cent. I just provide research to help people out. And hopefully people donate to pay for the airtime and the bandwidth and so forth. So that's all I have, and I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great, Stu. Thank you for all that you do. Everybody out there, have a great week. Be safe, have fun, and we will talk to you again soon.